We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. And I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well in true Philadelphia style. The Eagles won a playoff game, yet negativity seems to be in the air. I feel like we can get a little bit obsessed. There was a really good clip the other day, Shane, from, I think it was Nate Tice. No, it wasn't Nate Tice. It was Nate Tice's old podcast co-host. Was it Robert Mays?
Robert Mays.
And I
miss those guys podcasting together.
I miss it massively. Good. And don't get me wrong, I count myself as one of those like scheme nerdy guys, but there was a really good clip, and he even jokes about it himself, where they were talking about like why they like a certain team, the like schematics around it, and why film guys like it. And then he said, and like the casual fan is probably looking more at like the results. And someone commented like, NFL Scheme Podcast tells people that focusing on results is bad, whereas we care about the process. And I sort of feel like there's a bit of that with Philly this week. It's like everyone wants to point out the passing game flaws and Hurts missed this and could we do this? And it's like they do just keep winning. Like, say what you want to say about whether you like it philosophically. Me and you spoke about how good the Packers were. Now, the Packers did get beaten up a little bit in the game with injuries, so I think you have to take that into account a little bit. But, they're like a very good football team, and I think they're a very, very good football team. And the Eagles beat them 22-10, and to be honest, sort of felt like the game was over after the first quarter. I know, obviously now I'm looking back at it, it feels like that. Live, I didn't feel like that. But I was
I was freaking out in the second quarter.
Yeah, I think I was, when they scored early on, I think I just like sort of calmed down. So yeah, we are. The whole point of the podcast, is not to just celebrate the results, because otherwise you may as well switch off, go home, do something else with your day, because who cares about the game? So obviously we're going to break it down. Obviously there's things I don't like about the game. Was it perfect? No, we will talk all about it. But I do think what was Aaron Rodgers' phrase? Was it just relax? Yeah. Just chill a little bit. I feel like we've got a little bit mental this week. I think it's gone back and forth actually. Like, I love Shil Kapadia, as most people, I imagine, who listen to the show did. But BLG tweeted out one of his stats from his podcast today. Did you see this, or from his article? No, and I'm going to assume that Shil is 100% correct, because he's always correct with his numbers. But he said that the game the Eagles won was the least efficient passing performance by a quarterback whose team have won in the last 10 years in the playoffs. And I was like, I haven't read it. Full disclosure, I should probably read it before I talk about it. I'm sure it was like a DVRA metric or something. And I'm like, that was the worst. I mean, he was 13 of 21 for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Like, I know the numbers are really poor because they didn't have to throw a lot, because I know 131 yards is pretty atrocious, but it's like, is that really the worst in the last 10 years from an efficiency standpoint? And I'm guessing the stats say it is, but I find that sort of hard to believe, because the context of the game was that the Eagles were always winning, and the Eagles have a really good defense, and they scored 10 points in the first quarter, and the Packers only scored 10 points all game. So I feel like context matters a lot this week. So, anyway.
We've got a comment from GGN saying that the metric he was using was success rate.
Right.
Which, to be fair, was atrocious. I think their success rate was 35%. Really? Their drop back success rate was 35%. So that is really bad from an efficiency standpoint, for sure. Yeah,
man. Interesting. Yeah, the Discord guys are so smart. Like, I love it how I can just put a question out, say something in the podcast, and someone can just instantly tell me what's happened, which is great fun. Speaking of Patreon, Shane, we may as well get out of the way nice and early. If you enjoy the show now, we are going to do something tomorrow for the Patreon. We're going to do a little Rams preview, because we decided we haven't got time to review and preview in one episode. So if you're not on the Patreon, free trial, I think, for a week. So if you want to listen to the Rams preview, all you got to do is sign up for a week's free trial. And
I'll tell you what. You can go sign up as a free member. We'll post it to free members for the page. So you can go sign up as a free member, and you can get our preview show. And stick around. I think you'll see some of the things we put out that you do have to subscribe to. I think you might stick around. So we'll put that posted to all Patreon members. So go sign up for a free account. And then once you decide you like it, grab you a free 1-week trial of a paid tier and check out our other stuff too.
I agree. Shall we stop plugging and talking about random articles and stats? I feel like I've got a lot to say this week.
Actually, I do need to say one more thing, because somebody asked me today when I posted my film thread where we were podcasting, because they couldn't find it on the BGN radio feed. So to everybody listening, like, Eagles Pin Pool's been going strong for 9 months, but I know there's still a lot of people out there that are not very active on social media that just don't know what happened to BGN radio feed. So check in on your Eagles fans, make sure they know about us, share the podcast around. It really helps us out, because not being able to record like a farewell episode really did probably set the new feed back like a year at least. So if you guys will share the podcast feed out, Eagles Pin Pool Network, with all your Eagles fan friends, we would greatly appreciate it. And now we can stop self-promoting. Jonny, let's dive in. Should we do offense or defense first?
Offense. I've already seen the comments straight away coming in from Zay on Twitter. Let's talk offense first. Give the people what they want, Shane. I think it's an offensive week.
Okay. Let's do it. Do you want me to kick us off, or do you want to kick us off here?
I mean, Shane, normally we put like a little peek behind the curtain. There's like we always put in our 3 points into the chat, and normally, they're quite sensible. Like my 3 points, I like to think are relatively sane. And you had a very normal like third down point, and then you just changed it, Shane. What did you change your point to? Trying to tell the people what you put in the chat?
Things that should be thrown in the trash.
Things that should be thrown in the trash. So do you know what? Why the hell? Let's start negative, and then we can talk about the positives of the offense. So we just get the negative thing that everyone's talking about out of the way first with the passing game. So talk to me, Shane, about things that should be thrown. I can't talk. Things that should be thrown in the trash from this Sunday's game.
Okay, so there's a few things that the Eagles just need to take out of the playbook. Like, just get rid of it, because it doesn't work. It's never going to work in the current configuration of the team. And so one of them, we go very early in the game, and it's 3rd and 5. The Eagles are leading 7-0. I think this is the second drive. I think they score off the special teams turnover. They force a 3 and out. They get the ball. They're near midfield, 3rd and 5. And what do? They're going to send Saquon Barkley in orbit motion, and they throw a screen pass behind a 170-pound receiver who I love to death, but cannot block because, again, he's 170 pounds. Now, the Eagles do pull a couple guys, and I think there's an RPO element to this. I think this is Hurts is reading based on pre-snap. Do we want to throw the screen? Do I want to keep it and run it? Here's the thing. Anything that involves a read where there is a possibility to throwing a screen needs to be thrown in the trash, because predictably it gets nothing. And then the Eagles punt on a 4th and 5 from their own 47-yard line, which is also a bad decision that we don't have to get into. But you telling me if you just keep that with Hurts and you get 3 yards, the Eagles aren't going for it on 4th and 2? Throw the screens in the trash. Now, you might say, our astute listeners might be like, but the Eagles got a really big play on a screen pass later in the game, and they did. Here it is to Saquon Barkley. This is going to be a 19-yard gain on a screen pass, and that's awesome, as long as you totally ignore the fact that 15 of the 19 yards were for the Packers throwing him down out of bounds. And so, essentially, I mean, if you're calling screenplays and your only chance for it to actually be good is for the other team to commit a penalty after the whistle, I would call that maybe something you should throw away. I went and looked this up, Jonny. You might have seen the tweet, but if not, okay. In the last 10 years, I looked up the success rate for every team in the last 10 years on screen passes. So 320 teams. Where do you think the Eagles rank?
I now don't want to know, like the bottom 20.
316th out of 300.
Oh my goodness, that's mental.
It's
what a great stat that
first
is.
Percentile.
Shane's stats, man. Stats podcast, but you're probably saying enough of them as you're already on here. What on earth is that? That's a hell of a number. Normally you'd think they'd be like terrible offenses as well, like guys with like no receivers. What Yeah, interesting. Just because the podcast sometimes likes it when we do this, Shane, can I just completely disagree with you for a second, which is always fun?
Sure.
I pretty much agree with, I think, what you're going to say, because I think we see football very similar philosophically. I don't hate the 3rd and 5. Now, before everyone jumps on me, like, I think Hurt should just keep it. Like, I'll be honest, I just don't get why he doesn't keep it. My also theory is even if he gets a couple of yards running, then you go for it on like 4th and 2, 4th and 3. But like, I don't know if you got the play pre-snap up again. I can tell you quit this play, so maybe we'll have a quick chat about it. Like, I'm fascinated to know who he's reading.
He's not. Because he immediately looks at Barkley.
That's what I watched this play a lot.
You would not be reading the end to that side. So I think because of the way the blocking works, I think the run is a tagged on element, but I think he's choosing pre-snap. He's not actually reading somebody. It's based on like box counter alignment.
But that's why I went back and forth on I got really confused because the thing that I didn't get was why they didn't leave the edge unblocked for a start. So Lane Johnson blocks the edge. So do a little bit of quick maths here, Shane. Ignore the edge. Let's imagine that Hurts just takes off. And one of the benefits of having a mobile quarterback is you can ignore that left edge defender. Then you've essentially got 1-2 over a receiver, a very deep safety and an edge. So you've got 4 on that side. Then you've got 1 quarterback over AJ Brown. So I would count it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically out of the box. A little bit of quick maths. That means there are 6 defenders in the box. However you want to describe it, I guess. And then basically the Eagles have got 6 blockers, have they not? Because they've got 5 offensive linemen plus Dallas Goedert pulling. So that's the benefit of having a mobile quarterback, is that you get +1 in the run game. In fact, I think the defender over the top of the slot as well ends up following Barkley a little bit, doesn't he? So you definitely clear out 3. So like, I'm surprised, like, pulls it like now. Like, you've got 3 immediately taken out, and you've got a deep safety, and you've got the core on AJ Brown. So you've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the box, and the Eagles have 6 blockers. Even better than that, as I said, you can basically block, or you can ignore the edge. I think Hurts can outrun the edge, so I think you could end up with 6'5" in that very small box. If they're not reading this, I would say bad, because they should be. Because when you look at Hurts actually throwing it here, it's just never going to work. You've got 3 deep 3, and as you mentioned, one of them is Devontae Smith. The only way this works is if you're asking for Saquon Barkley to basically catch it and immediately make someone miss. And it's like, I don't really get it. So I think you might be right. And the reason why I think you might be right is because Lane Johnson's set confuses me. But I would be more than happy for this just to be a run. Like, so I'm interested to know how, like, the decision making behind this. We will never know. I had a great chat in the Bleeding Green comments this week with somebody who we discussed things. And I just went, I appreciate the conversation. Like, it was a good chat, but I said, the sad truth is we would never know, because we're not in the room unless someone specifically asks him about that exact 3rd and 5. We can speculate. But all I'd say is, if it is a pure RPO and he has the chance to run, I don't hate it. If it's a straight up predetermined throw with a fake like run action, then I'm with you. I don't like it. Counterpoint as well. I didn't like throwing it behind Devontae Smith. The argument could be stick Johnny Wilson out there, for example. I think then you could make the argument, but then the team wouldn't respect the throw as much. I might disagree. I think football's a numbers game. I don't really care if it's Jahan Dotson, Devontae Smith, or Johnny Wilson out there. I think the Packers play it the same way. So I would simply put a bigger receiver out there anyway, because then if you throw it, you got a bigger receiver. And if you run it, it doesn't make a difference. So I'm not going to exactly disagree with you, but I thought I'll just give like the other side of the coin on that particular one. But that's probably long enough on the first play of your first point. So I'll let you get some other plays that should be thrown in the bin.
Okay, here's another one. I think you're going to talk about this play from a Hurts standpoint later, but I just want to talk about orbit motion. Watch Devontae Smith go in orbit motion and watch how little the Packers respect it. You just jog in orbit motion. He's just jogging out there. And all it does, the Packers do not respect it at all. So it just lets them put 4 guys over the Eagles 2. Because they know you're not throwing this, because they know you're a terrible screen team, because Devontae Smith jogged it out anyways. Orbit motion is something that the Eagles use quite frequently, and it's simply not a threat, and defenses don't respect it because they can't run screens. So really all you're doing here is just taking your second best receiver and saying you don't need to cover him at all. And so orbit motion, in the way the Eagles currently run it, needs to be thrown in the trash can. And so too does jet motion, because here the Eagles are going to run jet motion. And the whole point of jet motion, they're going to bring jet motion from the right of the screen to the left. You're trying to stretch the defense horizontally to open up a run lane going the opposite way. Watch how little the Packers respect this jet motion. Watch everyone on their team just jump to the right. Like, as soon as jet motion happens, they know, oh, they're not handing it to the receiver. You know why? Because the Eagles have handed it to a receiver 3 times this entire season. And so it's got to be a run the other direction. And everybody just massively jumps to the right. And credit to Kenny Gainwell. He does a good job of sticking his foot in the ground and bouncing back outside. But jet motion and orbit motion are a complete waste in the Eagles playbook, because they never hand it to receivers, because they can't run the screen game. Those things just need to go. It's not fooling anybody. It's essentially tipping run plays, and it is taking receivers out of routes. It's making things, it's not stressing a defense. It's making things easier on the defense.
Right, interesting. I'm going to go straight to my first point now, Shane, which is quite similar. So I think we've hit on a theme this week.
Quickly, hold on. I need to answer one comment real quick.
Yeah,
because I saw early on somebody asked about the pass to Dallas Goedert being a screen pass that was a touchdown. Sort of, that's against cover 0, so it's more of a hot thing that they check into. There's another screen pass they run to Dallas Goedert in this game for 4 yards. Screens to Dallas Goedert is the only thing I'm okay with, because they almost always run them as tunnel screens. And Dallas Goedert, for whatever reason, is the only guy that ever makes screens work. So Dallas Goedert screens okay, everything else bad.
I can't believe he didn't show the angle of the Saquon Barkley one on first down, which might be the worst play call I've ever seen in the history of the NFL. I don't want to get into it because it annoys me. I put in my Bleeding Green article, I said I could go on Madden and type in like a random play generator and I'd get a better play against the cover 0 blitz, because you're throwing a screen to a guy who's covered, and you know the guy's covered because you motioned him across the formation and the guy followed him. I was like, what? Surely you check out of that? Maybe that's a Hurts thing for not checking it out. There's lots of comments about like, what's the issue with running screens? I'll be honest, I don't know. I would love to have like a great like argument as to they've just been bad at it for ages.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if maybe like we expect the offensive line, because they're mobile, to be good at everything, and maybe they have weaknesses. And also, I think everything in sports is a priority level. They don't get that long to practice. Same in any sport. You have a limited amount of time, and you prioritize things that you want to do well. And most organizations will prioritize a few specific things. The Eagles don't prioritize screens. I've never really understood it. And GGN10 commenting has been there since Sirianni. I think that's probably true. Essentially, like, I think maybe it's just not a priority. Not everything can be a priority. Comment from T Grant about Saquon on the wheel. That is my second point. So I will get to that in a bit. I'm going to go to my first point though, Shane, because I think it links to yours. I think the Eagles have a little bit of an issue with misdirection, meaning they're not very good at it. I think they win by just being better than the other team, and I don't think they sell misdirection that much. So I'm going to give you a really nice example of 2 plays that I think highlight my point. I'm going to start, Shane, with my play number 7, if you don't mind. So I really hate this play. So the Eagles run the ball extremely well. One of the best running teams in the NFL, as we know. So what you should be able to do is you should be able to take advantage and run play action a lot and very well. And apparently, unless Tanner McKee's the quarterback, we don't do it very well. And before everyone shouts at me for saying Hurts hates it, I'm like, I've got no evidence that Hurts hates it. Every time they do it, Hurts is very successful on it. Hurts' success rate is high. And you know what? If he hates it, tough. Moore tells him, well, I'm the offensive coordinator. These are numbers. You do it well. Now, watch this play. So the Eagles are essentially, as you're showing on the screen for those watching, they're putting a tight end, and Dallas Goedert is running the motion. Now, the whole idea of this play, is Dallas Goedert is meant to stretch the defense horizontally. Ideally, their edge defender or their nickel corner, I think it's a 5-man front, so I guess it's their edge, but he almost drops into like a linebacker position. He needs to be stretched horizontally, okay? So let's just look at, first of all, Dallas Goedert's, seeing as you're talking about motion and shifting, that's really like, he's not selling anything there. There is no chance he's getting the ball. It's just really like, I'm not blaming Goddard for being lazy here. I'm just saying they're not coached to like run every play like this hard. Like, Goddard's not running that hard. He should really be trying to stretch that edge defender. The second thing is, Shane, there's a really easy way of going if play action works. Just look at the opposition linebackers. Watch the two Packers linebackers. The whole idea is you're trying to drag that first linebacker up and stretch the other one to the corner, as I've just shown you, so you can hit the slant to AJ Brown. The linebacker's not even like bothered. So look at how small the window is in reality. I don't think that linebacker even takes a step forward, Shane. You're the best running team in the NFL. You're running an under center play action, and you can't draw the linebacker up a yard. He doesn't move forward a yard. And the reason why is because the offensive line basically goes straight into a pass set. Got it sort of half running it. And they just don't really sell this play at all. Football's sometimes about selling something you essentially want the defense to see. When you're the best running team in the NFL, it shouldn't be that hard. I'll show you a different example, Shane. If you go to play 10 of my film, Fred, this is how you do play action well. This is how you actually use it. And I think the big difference is here. Number one, do with play sequencing. This is 3rd and 2. So you call play action at a great time. This is after 2 straight runs. Number 3, look at how well the offensive line actually sell this. They essentially get a quicker up the field. And if you look at the Packers linebackers, they really commit to this one. You can see both of them have had a bit of a nightmare. This is an example of what I don't understand the Eagles don't do more of. This, to me, should work 5 to 10 times a game, because when you have a running game that's that good, the passing game should be easier. I don't need Jalen Hurts with Matthew Stafford because his mobility is a reason why the running game is so good. Yes, mobile quarterbacks often run easier offenses. Yes, they can still be just as effective because their mobility opens up stuff like this. So they were a good example, in my opinion, of maybe not running every route, running every motion really, really, really hard. I think that stuff matters. I must admit, I didn't even look at Jalen Hurts' fake, but maybe Hurts needs to get better when it comes to faking it on play action, because that also matters. How hard is a QB setting that play action fake? How hard is the running back faking it? All of these little things matter, because that first example is horrendous. There is no window at all to hit AJ Brown. If this is a team that can't run the ball, I accept it. When you're the best running team in the league and you can't get a linebacker to move an inch forward on an under center run action, then I think alarm bells are ringing that it's something they don't do particularly well. So when we're talking about things the Eagles can improve on, I think misdirection, setting play action is something that they absolutely can do better. And I think it comes down to the really fine, minute details that is basically coaching.
Yeah, that play action bootleg by Jalen Hurts, that play worked so unbelievably well. The Eagles called 0 play action bootlegs after that for the rest of the game.
I don't get it. I really don't get it. I can't explain it. There was one play, Shane, that really killed me when they ran 3 plays in a row and then they went to empty on second down. And I'm sitting there going, you just run 3 times in a row and then you go empty. I love empty. Go empty on first down at the start of a drive. If you just run 3 plays in a row and 2 of them were very successful, now is the time to confuse the defense. And when you go empty, the defense immediately just goes, oh, well, it's a passing play. Hurts is running. That's it. And by the way, I'm surprised you didn't put that play in the trash as well, because it was one of the worst plays I've ever seen. And also, that was another play where receivers did not run their routes hard when they didn't think they're getting the ball.
That was the shallow cross play, right?
That was a shallow cross play. Whoever the wide receiver coach is and tight end coach, I need to get on these guys to run hard. And I'm not calling players out for being lazy. I'm really not. I think some of it comes down to coaching, like where they're supposed to be in a certain time and a certain depth. But some of it comes down to they're not really doing a good job with misdirection. Anyway, we've done 1 point in 25 minutes in true on the Shane Page style, and we haven't even got in to what I think might be the biggest takeaway from the game. For those of you watching, this is the play I'm on about, Shane. This is after 3 straight runs. It's such a bad play call. And if you watch AJ Brown at the bottom of the screen, I think it's Grant Calcaterra, they're jogging. Even Goddard's not really looking back at the football. There's no one. There's no horizontal stretch. There's no vertical stretch. There's no attack in the middle of the field. There's no level. This play, I could write a thesis on how bad it is. Spacing's off. It's just an awful, awful design. It's only one play. So every offense has bad plays called. But that coming after 3 straight runs, I just found infuriating because it's like the running game and the passing game are separate entities. It's like, this is a run play, this is a pass play, and the defense shouldn't know that. Like, tie the two together, marry the two together. Yeah, annoying and confusing.
All right, let's keep rolling as we're 25 minutes into a podcast and have each only made 1 point. I'm going to talk next. This is a comment. This is something I never thought would be a point for me in a show. But let's talk about A.J. Brown's blocking. Because, I mean, other than blocking, he was basically just doing cardio on Sunday. So we might as well talk about his blocking. And I thought he was really good as a blocker. And this first play, he actually kind of misses the block. But I put it in here because, I mean, one, he's a receiver. He's going to miss blocks. But I liked what they did. They start with him condensed inside of Dallas Goedert, and then they motion him outside, and it gives him a better angle to come in on the safety. And he does ultimately miss the block. I mean, he sort of barely gets in the way, but the safety just kind of gets around him. It doesn't really matter because Cam Jurgens blocks another player into the safety that Brown was supposed to block. But I thought that was a nice little wrinkle, and they did come back to that a little bit later in the game. But here you have A.J. Brown again. He's condensed. He's inside of Goddard. But this time he's going to scrape across the formation, and he ends up becoming a lead blocker for Jalen Hurts. And I like this because, one, I like this QB counter read. You can give it to Barkley with pullers in front. You can pull it. We've seen them throw this to the scraper before. This time the scraper is going to be a lead blocker. But watch A.J. Brown downfield blocking in front of Jalen Hurts. Like, that's a tremendous block for a wide receiver. And so I thought he was a plus there. We get him on this Goddard screen. This is the only screen I'm okay with. And it's a tunnel screen coming into Goddard. And A.J. Brown's going to sort of come kick this guy out. And it's only a 4-yard gain. And it's only a 4-yard gain, actually, because the Packers play this fantastically. They're trying to get the left side of the offensive line pulling out too. And Lucas Van Ness just recognizes what's happening. And he hits Jordan Mailata to disrupt everything. But even at that, like 4 yards right there, that screen on 2nd and 7 to go to 3rd and 3, I'll take that. And then here's another run play. He's going to start from the left of the screen, and you'll see him come into the screen, and he blocks Xavier McKinney coming downfield. Unfortunately, Cam Jurgens also decides to block Xavier McKinney instead of taking this linebacker, and that linebacker is able to bring Barkley down. But A.J. Brown was good as a blocker in this game. And then here you get the cover 0 check. A.J. Brown's going to sort of, it looks like he's kind of running a slant. He's just getting into position to block this safety. And you get Dallas Goedert one-on-one against a cornerback. And we know how that turned out. A.J. Brown did not make much of an impact in the game as a receiver. He only has 1 catch. And it was a fantastic catch where he slips out of his break and makes the catch from his knees. But A.J. Brown had a very big impact in the running game. And, you know, I'm sure that our viewers are smart enough that they didn't make a big deal out of A.J. Brown reading a book on the sidelines, which apparently he does all the time. But for those that do and think A.J. Brown's upset about targets, that's some of the highest effort I've seen A.J. Brown give blocking ever. So playoff game, he's ramped up. He's ready to play. He's ready to contribute, even in a game where, you know, unfortunately, he didn't get a lot of balls thrown his way.
Yeah, I know you have the exact same opinion as me because I've seen you talk about it in the Discord. He looked fine. His injury was less of a problem than I thought. The only play I thought he was short was on the deep shot off of the fake tush push. I think he was a little bit slower than normal there, but I think he looked fine. I think the lack of getting him the football is bizarre, quite frankly. You can see they tried to on that play action slant, but except for that, I didn't see a lot of plays that were deliberately designed to go to him. But then again, when you only throw it 20 times, as we've said before, and a couple of them screens to Goddard, you don't have that many, I guess, plays you can look at him. But I didn't think he was bad at all, and I thought his blocking was really strong, which is good to see. I think we need to have the discussion that is on everyone's mind, Shane. So I called it up for my second point, and I'm going to bring it up with a play, one play only, play 5 on my film thread. A lot of you probably know what I'm going to talk about. My second point is the Eagles' offense being conservative and risk-averse. It's the phrase I keep using of late. I basically think the Eagles' plan, and I put this in the end of my BGN article this week. The Eagles' plan is basically, and I guess, Shane, I'll ask you this question, and those of you listening live, I'll ask you the question in the chat as well. If I could tell you that the Eagles were going to go to play the Rams this week, then play Detroit, and then play the Kansas City Chiefs, and they did not turn the ball over once in all those 3 games. Do you think? I mean, I know they hypothetically win the first 2. I get it. But like, if I could tell you they're not going to turn the ball over before the Lions game, they're not going to turn the ball over before the Rams game, they're not going to turn the ball over before the Chiefs game, do you think the Eagles are going to win?
No.
And that, I think, is the big question. I think the Eagles' philosophy is our run game is so good, our defense is so good, that we do not want to turn the football over. In fact, we are making it our mission to not turn it over. And for those wondering, like, is it Hurts? Is it not? All I'll say is I watch a lot of Jalen Hurts, and I think Jalen Hurts has been a very aggressive thrower for the majority of his career. I think he's been good at not turning the football over, but I don't think Hurts has shied away from one-on-one catch balls on the outside. Like, I think he's always been that kind of thrower. This play here, Shane, it's just very simple post-will. The Eagles ran a similar play against the Packers in week 1, so we know they like this design against the Packers. I have seen Jalen Hurts make some fantastic throws into the corner of the end zone. Think Devontae Smith in 3rd and long, one hand in the back of the end zone. Think Saquon Barkley a few weeks ago when they got him on this exact same route. Think Saquon Barkley on this exact same route against the Packers in week 1. They get the perfect matchup they want. Dallas Goedert takes away the deep safety, and Jalen Hurts gets one-on-one with the linebacker. And you can see it for yourself if you're watching. Saquon eventually comes open, but I think he takes maybe half a second extra to come open. Hurts eliminates him very early on. I think it could be, that's the one, GGN, the Jags game. That was one of the ones I was talking about as well.
Yeah, I was trying to find that play.
I think that he could make this throw to the back of the end zone. Is it slightly risky? Yes. You know, you spoke about your like big time throw, Shane, at one of your tweets that Hurts hasn't had many of. I think you could count this as a big time throw, but he doesn't take it. And for those of you wondering, this is Shane's now got the play up against the Jags. This is literally the same play, identical. Post will. He stays on it longer and he completes it. So I don't really know what's changed between the plays. So that makes me question, firstly, why is Hurts not throwing it? I think he is less open here. I think he is less open than he was against the Jags. So I think you can argue he's just eliminated him too early. But basically, this play to me screams safety first. This play to me screams, if you don't love it, you don't think he's absolutely open, then get out of there. And I'm going to be honest, Shane, I've gone a little bit mad this week hearing the phrase wide open. Like, can we all collectively shut up about guys being wide open? There's probably about 3 to 5 passing plays in NFL when guys are wide open. No team schemes 30 wide open throws. You can't play QB in the NFL and throw to wide open receivers all day, unless you're playing against a horrendous defense and you've got the most talented offensive coordinator. You have to essentially throw tight window throws at some point. Open in the NFL could be a yard or 2. I don't think Saquon's open in that clip, but I think you can make that throw if you really want to. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll hold my hands up, and I put this in the comments earlier on BGN. Someone commented saying it's a Hurts error, and I said, fair enough. If you think that's a Hurts error, by all means say it's a Hurts error. Same idea, by the way, in the same game, Jalen Hurts took a 5-step drop on a slant, and I'm not going to get into that point this week, but the timing of the drop was all off, and someone said, well, it's got to be a Hurts error. He's meant to take a 3-step drop. And I was like, fair enough. You can have that opinion. I don't know. You don't know what the drop's meant to be. We don't know what he's being coached to do. It is very possible, Shane, that they're saying before the game, listen, if we're winning and Saquon one's a real route and he's not wide open, don't bother. Don't force anything. Don't force anything. And anyone that works in any leadership position knows that leadership's messages make a difference to the team's culture. Leaders can absolutely make a difference on an organization, on a team, whether it's a business, a sport, whatever. And if the Eagles' messaging, which I personally, from what I've heard from Sirianni in press conferences, from what I've seen out there, I think their philosophy is we are going to win this game if we don't turn it over. And I think it is causing Hurts to play a little bit safety first. That is my opinion on the risk-averse nation. And Dan's comment saying anytime there's a hurt critique, always look at the coaching. It's always a questionable call. It can't always be a coincidence. I think there is a little bit of like, maybe Hurts only likes to run certain things and therefore you only call certain things. But again, it's sort of your job as a coordinator and a coach to get him out of his comfort zone. Everything we've ever heard about Hurts is that he likes being coached hard, for what it's worth. I don't think he's a diva. He's not a Carson Wentz. I think they're playing safety first football, and I think they think it's going to win them the Super Bowl if they don't turn it over. And I think that's why we're seeing less down the field shots. That's why we're seeing less tight window throws. It may not even be, Shane, they're directly telling Hurts, don't throw it. But if the messaging all week is, don't turn it over, don't turn it over, I think that messaging impacts the way the QB plays. Well,
yeah, I think. So make that throw. It's just not a dangerous pass. It's your running back running away from a linebacker to the back pylon. Like, I just don't think that's a dangerous throw. That's one I want you to pull on the trigger on. Like, if you go to the first touchdown of the game, this is one where I think you should be a little conservative, and I think Hurts does the right thing. And the Eagles, they get 2-by-2, and the Packers are in a quarters coverage, and so you end up.
Interrupt really quickly.
Yeah.
How many 2-by-2 plays do we see when no one's open? There's a big picture point. Like, we all are happy with this touchdown. If you look at the concepts, there's no one to throw the ball to. Like, they're lucky the pass rush is poor because I don't really like anything here. But anyway, sorry.
There should be somebody open, though, is the thing on this one. So the linebacker's bailing out to this 3-receiver side. So you've basically got 3-over-2. And Dallas Goedert runs a dig route. And this dig route should be open. And I think Goddard runs this too deep and doesn't break it off hard enough. Like, you're running right to the safety, and then you break over the middle. Like, you could argue Hurts should throw this with anticipation over the middle.
I was going to say tight window
this
throw.
This is one where I'm like, okay, I'm fine with this turn down because A, you just got a turnover on the opening kickoff. Let's make sure we get points. And B, I think Goddard does kind of a poor job of snapping this route off over the middle. This is one where I'm okay with be conservative. I think on the one that you just showed, though, like, this ball, just throw it to the back pylon. Like, on the Goddard one, there's a chance that ball gets intercepted. Here, you're throwing at, what is it? Is it a linebacker? Yeah, you're throwing at a linebacker to the back pylon. The linebacker's not turning his head around and making a pick on that. I mean, the Quinyon Mitchell interception at the end of the game, Zach Bond runs 45 yards downfield, and it's a great coverage play, but he doesn't have a clue where the ball is. So I think there's a fine line there. And I talked about it on Twitter. In the last 7 games that Hurts has played, he only has 2 turnover-worthy plays, which is great. But he has 0 big-time throws, and they've only attempted 11 passes over 20 yards. That's a problem to me.
That's the one. Down the field. Yeah.
Because what they're doing now
what this team
is, teams are stacking the box. You're not taking the shots deep. And it negatively impacts your stuff that Hurts is really good at, the outbreakers, the comebacks, the curls, because teams are starting to sit on that, knowing you're not throwing it deep. And so the Eagles are trying to stress people really shallow with the screen game. They're not trying to stress anybody deep. And that, to me, is the big problem with the offense. And I went into that a lot on my All-22 film review. So those of you that are in the Patreon community, check that out. I went like 32 minutes on the passing game. Those of you listening that aren't members, again, free week trial, go check that out and let me know what you think. But I'll stop going into it here because we need to keep rolling.
Yeah, we do need to keep rolling. I actually have a choice of my third point, and I can't decide what to do. So I might just basically do the one that I wasn't going to do and then just raise the final point very, very quickly. Do you want to start with your final point before we move on, though?
Yeah, I love how I'm like, we probably better get rolling. And you're like, actually, I'm going to do.
I will roll quickly, though. Basically, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to be quick because I actually do want to talk defense in this game. So,
okay. Let's go. I put out our Patreon's player spotlight poll, and Nolan Smith and interior offensive line play were kind of real close. So I'm going to do both as 2 separate points, Johnny. One on offense, one on defense. But the interior offensive line had a bad day in pass protection. And I'm just going to show a few clips. This is something that needs to get cleaned up. On this first one is actually probably more Jordan Mailata, but they're going to run a stunt. The end is going to penetrate in. The defensive tackle loops around him, and this doesn't get passed off correctly. And so you can see that you end up with the defensive tackle basically free running. It hurts. He has to roll out. He dirts the ball on the run to Goddard. Okay, that's not ideal. On this next one, watch Cam Jurgens. Cam Jurgens, he goes to block number 96, but he ends up with both. It's hard to see because I wish we had the back view, but he's got both of his hands on the inside shoulder. Jonny, if I'm trying to stop you from going somewhere and I put both hands on one shoulder, you just go the other way, right?
That would make sense.
Exactly what happens here. He gets beat to the outside, right into Hurts' lap. Hurts has to get out of the pocket again. And for some strange reason, he slides 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Let's just not talk about that play, Shay. But let's not talk about it. Because the word concussion comes into my mind, and I don't want to say that. So I'm going to not talk about that play before I get myself in trouble, because he's not thinking very well on that play. Let's leave it there.
Okay, yeah, let's keep rolling. On this next one, this is play action, and the Eagles are going to pull the right guard, Landon Dickerson. And so Cam Jurgens has to block this defensive tackle. And he puts hands on him and then goes out to triple team the other end, which he's either wrong or Lane and Mekhi Becton are wrong because they both stay out. Nobody slides. Maybe Cam Jurgens is thinking Mekhi Becton slides and you get the kick out here. I don't know what they're thinking, but it's never a good idea when a half a second after the snap, you have this. That's not a good thing. And Hurts has to roll out of the pocket. I think we end up getting a penalty called here for holding. And so all day it was rough from the interior offensive line. Here, Becton.
Shane, just quickly, that last play again. We talk about the importance of a mobile quarterback. Just show that last play again.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you screw up something like this. It's a sack. He's just defensive tackle, 1-on-1. That's nothing. The mobile quarterback these days, I don't think Hurt blinks. Allen doesn't blink. Lamar doesn't blink. It's defensive tackle. He's not getting me. Out we go. The ability to limit negative plays from mobility in the pocket is so underrated. We just brush off that play. An unblocked defensive tackle running straight at the quarterback down the middle. The Brady's, the Manning, the Breeze. Manning's probably falling over and just lying on the floor post age 35. Don't get me wrong. Those QBs are unbelievable.
That was the Peyton Manning move for years. Just fall down.
I'm just saying the modern NFL, we just take it for granted that some of these QBs just unblocked DT running straight at me. Who cares? There we go.
Yeah. And then we'll finish up with 2 here from Mekhi Becton that are bad on this one. He's going to get his outside shoulder pushed back. It's never good as a offensive lineman when you're perpendicular to the line of scrimmage. It's okay if you're a tackle setting the edge of a pocket. It's really bad for an interior offensive lineman. And Hurts gets hit in the face while he's trying to throw a slant route to A.J. Brown. And then on this one, he's going to get crossed inside his face. Immediate pressure on Jalen Hurts. He does get the ball out to Goddard there. But the interior offensive line especially was rough in this game. The Packers gave them a lot of trouble with stunts, which, by the way, the Rams run stunts at one of the higher rates in the league, not to preview yet. And they gave up a lot of pass protection issues when they tried to run play action passes. And they got to clean that up because play action passing is one of the strengths, in my opinion, of this passing attack, but it's got to be blocked up first.
Yeah, we're not allowed to say anything bad about Stout and the offensive line for obvious reasons. They're unbelievable, but I will say they made quite a lot of mistakes this year. There's quite a lot of guys who's blocking who. Even in the run game, there's one play in this game where Jurgens just went straight past someone. Whether it's Jurgens still learning, essentially they've got guys that never played together before, but they do make quite a few errors, I would say. Just not missed, not you've got beaten, just you're not there. If that makes sense. Not I'm blocking you and you've got past me, but I'm not blocking you because I'm blocking someone else. It's been quite a theme all year. Right, I'm going to be really quick because I do actually want to talk about the defense this week. So I think we've got some interesting things to talk about, especially with the depressing news of Dean's injury. So I'm not going to show any clips of the run games. I don't need to. I'm just going to say I think the Eagles need to pull their linemen as much as humanly possible because counter is basically unstoppable. Pinball in this game, there you go. Shout out to the Eagles Pinball Network, was also in this game. A lot of their zone stuff I find quite dull and boring, and I don't really understand why they don't pull linemen on every single play nearly, because the angles they create. Barkley seems to be amazing at gap scheme stuff. So I would like to see more of that. I'll show one play, and I'll just say it's been a theme all year. I don't know if it's Hurts' fault. I don't know if it's Kellen Moore's fault. I couldn't care less. At this point, I don't know. Anyone online that says they know, they don't. So don't listen to those people. But play 8 on my film, Fred Shane. This is the most Kellen Moore play of Kellen Moore. He has run this for years. Wherever team he's be, CeeDee Lamb is normally the X. It's the most easy play in the world. You go 4 strong to your left. You put your best receiver on your right, and you throw him a quick slant. This should be like easy money. And Jalen Hurts is in the gun, and he takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then steps up and throws it. And by the time he throws it, number 1, there's pressure in his face. Number 2, AJ Brown has given up because the ball's not there, which is not his fault. Number 3, the linebacker has already read Hurts and has made that window incredibly small. Just take a 3-step drop and throw it. And the reason why I mentioned this play is I talk all the time about the finer details of football. I think football looks easy on paper, but it's really hard. Like every drop has to be in sync. The timing of the routes need to be in sync. Maybe AJ Brown is meant to spend longer at the line of scrimmage, Shane. Maybe it's meant to be a 5-step drop. Maybe AJ Brown is meant to fake outside more. He doesn't run a normal slant, does he? He runs like a little slow step. These are the tiny, minute details that make really good offenses really good. The sad truth is the Eagles passing game has not been that all season long. So I don't care who you want to blame. Get in the comments, say it's Moore for not teaching a 5-step drop, say it's the QB coach, say it's Jalen Hurts. As I said, someone, very smart guy, put a great comment in my article saying that has to be Hurts' fault. And I'm like, maybe it is. Maybe it is his fault. I don't know. I'm not here to assign blame. That's not my job. I'm just here to point out what I see. And far too often this year, the Eagles' routes do not match the timing of the drops. That could be the receivers are too slow. The receivers are too fast. The receivers are meant to spend longer at the line of scrimmage. Hurts is too slow. Hurts' drops too quick. It could be a number of different things. Some quarterbacks take a 5-step drop quicker than others. Other quarterbacks take a 3-step drop quicker. Like, I don't know what the issue is, but it's an issue. And we're now in the divisional round of the playoffs, and it's still an issue. And it's an issue that we've been talking about with this team basically all year. The timing of the drops do not match the receiver's routes far too often. And I think that's one of the most obvious examples you would ever see. It should just be a quick slant, hit your back foot and throw it, and it ends up looking really hard. And when there's an offense, you can't complete a slant to your best receiver one-on-one when the entire other field is being covered with 4. That's a problem, because that's easy money. That should be an easy 8 to 9 yard gain 80% of the time. That's it for me in the offense this week.
Yeah. All right. Let's kick it over to the defensive side of the ball. I will just say before we do that, maybe take note of who you listen to talk about QB play and scheme things, because as in many other things in life, the people banging on the table, speaking in pure black and white, we know this for sure. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. You come here and we'll tell you there's a problem here. It could be on a lot of different things. It's really hard to suss that part out. So just a little pro tip for those of you as you try to figure out who to listen to, who's trustworthy in football media or really about anything. Maybe you keep that in mind, but I digress. Let's move on here to the defensive side of the ball. And I'll kick us off here to give Jonny a break for a second. And I'm going to talk about Nolan Smith, because he was our other player that it was basically a toss-up on our player spotlight poll for the Patreons. And so let's talk Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith was awesome in this game. And I was a big Nolan Smith fan coming out of the draft. I did not have the leap this year on my bingo card from him. He's been really, really good. And he's always been good in the run game, which is super weird that a guy that's so small, that was his strength. I literally put on my scouting report of him that his traits don't match his skills because he's tiny and fast, but somehow he's a good edge setter. And you saw that in this game, but you also saw him as a pass rusher. And so let's start on the first play. This play had massive implications for the game because the Packers pull Elton Jenkins across the formation. And you'll see Nakobe Dean, he's off screen right now. But what you're supposed to do as an edge setter in these situations is attack downhill and collapse. They're trying to kick you out with this puller, attack downhill and collapse that space. And you can see he does that. He's physical. Nakobe Dean flies through the hole and gets the tackle for loss. And the reason this becomes a huge play is because it knocked Elton Jenkins out of the game. And not celebrating that, just stating a fact. It was a clean play by Nolan Smith, but it really disrupted what the Packers wanted to do because they wanted to slide protection at Jalen Carter, which involved leaving their left guard on an island against Milton Williams. And they were fine with that because it's Elton Jenkins and he's really good. And then all of a sudden he was gone early in the game. And they went through 2 backups and they couldn't stop getting penalty flags, which it was kind of nice to see a holding penalty called. But again, I digress. That was a really good physical play by Nolan Smith, and he does that all the time. On the second one, I just want to point out this right tackle. This is a guy named Zach Tom. He was PFF's all-pro right tackle, despite allowing double the pressure rate by their own metric compared to Lane Johnson, despite allowing 4 sacks to Lane Johnson 0. But we don't have to be petty. Let's just watch Nolan Smith put him on skates. This is all-pro right tackle. Barely even touches Nolan Smith, and he sacks Jordan Love. Really good pass rush move there by him. Again, we don't have to be too petty, but there it is. On this next one, this is a really good rush by Jalen Carter, but I want you to watch Nolan Smith because Jalen Carter gets hands on Jordan Love. Jordan Love is sort of like starting to go left, and Nolan Smith realizes like this quarterback's either going to go down or he's going to escape and immediately get rid of the football because that's what you do when you're a quarterback. And Nolan Smith knows he can't get there, and he gets that hand up in the passing lane and tips it. It's actually kind of unfortunate that he does tip it because if he doesn't, Zach Bond probably does get the interception. Ultimately, he gets one the very next play, so it doesn't really matter. But then you have Nolan Smith later in the game. He's flipped sides, rushing against the left tackle. This is a great rep by Milton Williams. He immediately beats the backup left guard. He's not able to get the sack, but it's a good job by Nolan Smith of having eyes on the quarterback, shedding inside, and I guess he doesn't technically make the tackle because the whistle gets blown. But Nolan Smith was really good in this game. He ended with 5 pressures. He had 5 defensive stops. I believe both were team highs. Good for Nolan Smith, man. I'm so happy to see the leap that he's taken this year. And the Eagles are going to need him because the Bryce Huff thing looks like a disaster. So hopefully Nolan Smith continues to play at a high level next year.
Yeah, I got some tweets criticizing me last week for being too like anti-Bryce Huff when I said he was terrible last week. And I did still say I think he'll have a role on third down. Like, he had no role, man.
He was great this week. He had a 100% pressure rate.
Yeah, I know. Like, I think they're going to have to use him a little bit more, but who knows? I mean, this was a game when they're winning a lot as well, and the other team are going to throw. It gives me hope for Jalix Hunt as well. Sorry, you go.
As I say, this probably isn't the time, 52 minutes into a podcast, but I'm going to ask you a stupid question I posed on Birds of the Roundtable last night.
Love it.
Bryce Huff had 1 pass rush, or had 1 snap, and he had 1 pressure. If you had a guy that it was guaranteed he will get a pressure every time he's on every snap, but he can only play 5 snaps a game, how much money would he get paid?
A pretty decent amount.
I said he'd get paid like $20 million because that would still be like 85 pressures a year.
Yeah, $20 million sounds high. Just because,
But you could only play in 5 snaps. It's interesting.
Yeah, but are you saying Bryce Huff is going to be the 5? I really want him to play 5 snaps this week now and get 5 pressures.
Hey, we said last year that
right.
We said last year he was a good pass rusher. He needed to like keep that efficiency over more volume. We had 100% efficiency. Let's just stretch that out to 5 snaps now and see what happens.
2 this week, 3 against the Lions, 4 against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Right, I'm going to do a point that I'm boring of talking about, and I don't really want to talk about him that long because I feel like I can't say much else. I don't know what else I can say about Zach Bourne that hasn't been said this year. So I almost don't care about showing the film this week because anything I show, you've seen before. He reacts to the running game in like half a second every single time a guard is pulled. I guess I'll show you like there were so many plays I could pick out, but I'll just show you 2, I guess. And then I want to talk a little bit, just big picture about him very briefly without, I think we're going to get into linebacker afterwards as well, because we're going to talk about Burks. But just play 5, first of all. This is not a standard linebacker. I don't think I've ever seen someone diagnose and fit the runners quick. I mean, how good is this man's film study, Shane? If you're watching this on video, just if I could put this in slow motion, The right guard pulls, and the second the right guard pulls, and I mean, I'm talking, if you time this reaction, I even want to know how fast it is. He's seeing this play on film. He knows exactly what he's doing. Like, obviously, if it's an RPO and they throw it, he's out the play, but that's fine. That's obviously the way the Eagles were told him to play, which is one reason why the Eagles' run defense is good, by the way. Like, he beats the guard. It's absolutely absurd how quick he is to diagnose. The tackles gets nowhere near him, and he blows up the play. So he does that in the run game, Shay. And you know the play I'm going to show next. Anyone who's heard me talk about him. So you go first.
I try not to be like hot takey.
Yeah.
But watching that reaction to the guard and getting downhill in the run game just screams like Luke Kuechly. When you're talking about guys diagnosing things so quick, like that's what made me love watching Luke Kuechly back in the day. And I never thought I would talk about a guy not playing edge rusher for the first time. And
Shane, if he was
Kuechly's name,
if he was a 22-year-old first round pick who went 10th overall, people would be saying he's the best linebacker in the league. Yeah. Like, I haven't watched Fred Warner every week. I know when I've watched Fred Warner, I think he's unbelievable, but I think Zach Baldwin's just good at the moment. Like, I don't think you can play the position in this scheme better, basically. You know the final play I'm going to show. Just play 13. Like, what Quinion Mitchell's interception? He's covering a receiver on basically the other side of the field, running a vertical route. I don't even know what Blankenship's doing here. He's a little bit off as a single high safety. He seems to just completely not see the deep route. Or he's told, you know what, don't worry about it because Zach Bourne will do it. I mean, that could be.
Can you imagine that being the coaching point?
I know, I'm half being sarcastic, but that could be a dime. That could be like a Cuba DeJean and dime, like as you know, like in your linebacker was third and long. It's utterly absurd. It's like he's the most ridiculous linebacker I've ever watched. I don't think people realize how good this season's been, and I'm just gonna say it, and then I'll shut up about Zach Bourne because if the Eagles don't sign him, it's a monumental failure. At this point, I franchise tag him if you think you're going to lose him. And I know he's going to get paid like an edge. I couldn't care less. If I hear one person say, well, you know, Fangio's worked with unknown linebackers, therefore he could do it again next year. Like, shut up. Like, if you think you're finding another Zach Ball next year that Fangio's working with, you're insulting how good this guy's been. It's not just because he can run fast and he's an athlete. He has taken to the scheme like, I don't like a fish to water, if you want to say. Like, there is nothing the guy can't do in this scheme. I'm showing these two plays. I'm not even showing his interception when in quarters coverage, he just reads the backside dig on a guy he's not even covering because he knows where Jordan Love's going because he read his eyes. I'm not even showing the first play of the game when he drops down as an off-ball linebacker to play as a five-man edge. And then drops into coverage. Yeah, this is the quarters play. Are you going to talk about that play? Like, this is the interception. Are you going to talk about the you talk about the way he changes from 4 to like. I put this in the Discord last week. I think he is Jalen Carter is the best Eagles defender. I think maybe actually Ball might be there at this point, but I think Zach Ball is the most schematically important player the Eagles have. And I would go one step further and say he might be the most schematically diverse player in the league at this point. And I think there's a few others around the league that do it. I cannot say enough good things about this guy. And with Nakobe Dean going down to a brutal injury that's going to hurt, unfortunately, I think the rest of his career, which sucks, there is no way this guy should not be wearing Eagles green next year. Like, no way. I'm almost at that point where I'm like, you get it done no matter what. And I'm really like that about players, but he is irreplaceable to this team. And I think he deserves just another mention because when you watch greatness every week, you don't talk about greatness. Like, we can breeze through Saquon Barkley for the past month of the podcast because everyone knows who Saquon Barkley is. Zach Bourne has reached that stage where people don't talk about him because he's that good.
Yeah, if you're Howie Roseman and Zach Bond's agent comes to you and says he wants to be the highest paid linebacker in the NFL, him and Haw, and you threaten to franchise tag and you try to work it out. And at the end of the day, if he stands on that, you do it. I'd pay him. I would beat Roquan's deal if that's what it took to keep Zach Bond in Philly.
Yep, I think I'm there. I wasn't there like 2 months ago. I am fully there now.
By the way, do you know who the receiver is on the Quinion Mitchell interception that he's running with 48 yards downfield?
I do know, but I've forgotten. It's the
Bo Melton.
It's going to say it's Melton. I was going to say it's Weeks, but it's not. It's not, is it?
You know what Bo Melton's 40 time was at the combine?
Tell me.
It was a 4.34.
It's just stupid. It's literally stupid. Like,
You
I
literally
don't
have a
think,
linebacker that carried a receiver with 4.3 speed 48 yards downfield to cover up a mistake that your safety made.
and
That's
it's
insane.
not rare, and it's not a one-off. It's nuts. Right, we're an hour in, which is our usual time when we go. Let's speed things up ever so slightly. Especially now, I think we've hit the big points. Actually, no, I think we've got one more big point to hit. So I'm going to tell you what your next point's going to be, Shane.
Okay.
Can we have the Oren Burks discussion and
Yes.
what they might do? Talk to me about Burks' performance.
Okay, let's do it. I'll show some clips here from Oren Burks. Oren Burks gets inserted into the game after the injury to Nakobe Dean, and he's right here in the middle of the screen. On this first play, he's the middleman in quarters coverage, and he's just going to miss the tackle. And I kind of think he's also like playing the wrong hash here. I think he should be relating to this tight end up the seam, carrying it to the safety. Maybe he doesn't do that because Love is looking to the other side. Regardless, the ball ends up coming out here, and he just takes a bad angle and not only misses the tackle, but he prevents Zach Bond from making the tackle. And then you could just insert your circus music as we miss 5 more tackles on the same play and give up a first down on 1st and 20. This play right here is really important because the Eagles have decisions to make about how they want to handle linebacker. And so
big decisions,
big decisions because they love to play quarters type coverages. And when they do that, when you go 3-by-1, the Eagles almost always check into a tricks coverage where your weak side safety is relating to the number 3 receiver if he goes vertically. Your weak side corner is playing man coverage on the number 1 receiver anywhere he goes. And that means your linebacker, your weak side linebacker, has the running back one-on-one, no help. Now, the Eagles like to use Zach Bond over the middle of the field, and that's where he got his interception at. And the problem is if you do that, that lets teams get a one-on-one between their running back and Oren Burks anytime they want it if they go 3-by-1. And the Packers want it here, and Burks just gets beaten so badly on this one. Now, he rallies and makes the tackle, and I'm not going to pretend that's easy coverage to go over a tight end. You've got to be able to get outside. You've got to be able to get back inside. I'm not going to pretend that's an easy coverage rep. Zach Bond would play that better. But if you put Bond out there, you're taking Bond out of a position he's been really good at. And so don't get me wrong, they use Bond outside too, but it'll be interesting to see how they do that. It wasn't all bad, though. This is a really good rundown rep by Burks. I think he's going to be able to get downhill, and he gets skinny through that hole. That's not a hole that the Packers thought he was going to get through. And he forces this run to bounce outside, and there's guys there to make the tackle. And so he had some good reps. This one is a fire zone blitz, which means we're going to send Cooper DeJean on the blitz, and it's a 3 deep, 3 underneath coverage. And the responsibility of Oren Burks here is to relate to the number 3, which is the running back, if he goes fast to the flat. He doesn't. He stays into block. But watch Burks overcommits out here to the outside, opens up an easy throwing window. Now, to be fair, it is possible the running back could just like run at Cooper DeJean and slip his block. And so Oren Burks has to be responsible for that. It's also terrible coverage behind it. That's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's guy. And so it's bad coverage all the way around, but that's one I didn't think his reactions were quite as quick as it could be. And then on this one, in the run game, he just over pursues. This run's going to go to the left. Jalen Carter almost blows this up in the backfield. But if you're Oren Burks, you need to attack into this pulling lineman. You got to get into him, right? We're trying to condense this space like we talked about with Nakobe Dean, but he's going to run way too far to the outside here. He just takes himself out of the play and opens up this big cutback lane. And this is the Josh Jacobs, man, what a run. But he over pursued. He caused them a lot of issues in this game. Now, I've seen a lot of people calling for Trotter Jr. Trotter Jr. is going to have the same tackling issues. He's a terrible tackler, or at least he was in college. Generally, he's a very smart player who is athletically limited and a bad tackler. Oren Burks, been in the league longer. He's got a better physical profile. He's probably not going to be as good in coverage. So you can kind of pick your poison. Before Fangio mentioned Trotter, I would have said that like they're not going to make that change. But given Fangio's comments, maybe they will. Maybe they will put Trotter out there some on Sunday. So that's something to keep an eye on. But it is also worth noting Oren Burks in week 17 and 18 played really well. And it is against Dallas and the Giants. But in those 2 weeks, Nakobe Dean was out injured and he was the starter. So he got starter reps during the week. Trotter Jr. has been Zach Bond's backup all season. So they would be making some fairly seismic shifts if they put Bond and Trotter next to each other. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah, you raised a fantastic point, which we discussed in the Discord because we both saw it, although I assume we didn't see it at the same time. But that when you play backside of tricks, you're going to be in man coverage, and that was Nakobe Dean's job all year. So they basically have a few options they can do. They could swap the roles when they play against trips, for example. As you mentioned, they could play Jeremiah Trotter, which would be a huge risk, or they could go to a 5-1-5 and play with an extra defensive lineman more. I probably
That's
would
what
say
I would do.
I would start with normal, and I would start with Burks because I think Burks was good in week 17 and 18. If it looks like a bit of a disaster, I would start going more 5-man fronts very quickly. And if you do need to get an extra linebacker, I would maybe rotate in Trotter and give him a chance. I think Trotter's pass coverage is pretty strong. Whilst we're talking about the Josh Jacobs run, one of my plays is going to be about the run defense. I thought the run defense was really, really good in this game. So it's a bit weird to me to show a clip where it wasn't. But I just wanted to show you one issue that I think McVay is going to hammer. If you show that last play, Shane, that Josh Jacobs big run, go back to week 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this podcast and listen to me talk about the Eagles' obsession with slanting defensive linemen. And one of the issues that it makes is, well, the positive of slanting is that people like Jalen Carter and Milton Williams can blow up plays in the backfield. The negative is it makes a massive B gap. So if you pause it there, Carter nearly gets there. Look at the size of the gap between Carter and Nolan Smith. If you slant your defensive lineman, that B gap is huge. And if you're going to have a big B gap like that, you're going to need your linebackers and safeties to help out. And Oren Burks definitely overruns it. And Reed Blankenship, I think, overruns it as well. It's just a minor point because I think the Eagles' run defense is consistently very good. I think they're a very good run defense in general. So I don't think the Rams are going to gash them for like 200 yards or something. I think the Eagles are too stout for that. Sean McVay is smart. Sean McVay, I bet, is going to hammer that B gap. I think he's going to try and catch the Eagles' defensive lineman out. And every so often, if you get it right and you run opposite to the slant, especially without Nakobe Dean out there, that's my only minor concern this week about the Eagles' run defense, because I think McVay is an absolute genius. And if I can see it on film, he will see it on film. I can guarantee that. I'm going to go straight to my third point, Shane, because it fits quite nicely in. So I'll finish up with this one. I always talk about Darius Slay's interception. So if you've got the play yourself, can you stick it up? If not, it's somewhere on my film thread that I will find. Number one, we don't really do much about like amazing plays here in terms of like, it's number 4 on my film thread, by the way. So I'm not going to talk about like what Slay does, because anyone with 2 eyes can stare and watch this play and knows that it's an unbelievably good play. The reason why I wanted to talk about it, Shane, was because it gives another weight to your example and our example of Eagles and Fangio's philosophy. The philosophy is you flood the passing strength side, because normally that side, three receivers, trips, 4 strong as it is here, you're aiming to overload a team's zone defense. Fangio hates being overloaded. So when you go 4 strong or trips, he will often bring the opposite safety across. The reason why I mention it is people think Fangio's defense can be quite easy sometimes for like outside cornerbacks, because you don't play a lot of press man, single high coverage. And I always disagree, because you play one-on-one coverage a lot. If you're backside of trips or backside of 4 strong, you have got literally half the field to yourself. There is nobody else out there, Shane. This is like a training drill. You know, that those drills where you always say, but the receivers should win in those drills because it's one-on-one. This is a one-on-one drill. For Darius Slay to deal with the stop and go so easily, number one, to have the space to flip his hips or the speed to flip his hips to turn and run, then to intercept the football. This is one of the most crazy defensive backs play you'll see of the year. The guy is 34. And I think because he's been in and out of the lineup this year and he's been frustrating because of the injuries, I don't think he's got his flowers this year. So I want to just mention that play as my final point. Number one, because it sums up your point earlier on. Nice bit of sequencing as in the podcast business, shall we say. It highlights that play about Fangio's defense being isolated backside. And by the way, if we spot it, Shane, guess who will spot it? McVay will spot it. So if I was going up against the Fangio defense, I would try and isolate the backside receiver on a cornerback or a running back on a linebacker as well. That is literally like the training camp drill 101, and Slay plays that so well. I think that's all me done. So we're an hour 10 in, and I need to get out of here. So take us home, Shane, by talking about a thing that I wanted to talk about this week. So if you didn't steer it, I was going to steer it, because some of the Eagles' quarters coverage was so good in this game. I was going to call it just split safety coverage because they had some cover 6 and cover 8 as well. But yeah, talk to me about how good the Eagles. I'm guessing it's going to be a positive point. Not that I've asked you, but I just saw quarters.
Yeah.
Because I think some of the Eagles' route distribution and communication in this game was so good.
It was more, my point is more going to be about how much they used it and how much I think you're going to see it again against the Rams. So
they better use it a lot against the Rams, because cover 3 is, well, spoiler alert, if you're on the Patreon, I will talk about this at length tomorrow for the Rams preview, but the Rams attacked the Eagles cover 3 last time they played. So I hope we see more split safety.
Yes. So the reason quarters or quarter half is so good against the McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur, they all come from the same coaching tree, is because of cross keying with these safeties, looking to pick up crossing routes, because that's what they want to do. They want to run, it's play action, it's crossing routes, it's those sorts of things. Now, this first play, watch Zach Bond. He goes from linebacker to edge. And then what he does here is so good. This is a quarters coverage, but it's going to become 4 strong because there's a play fake and you get the running back moving to this side. And so right away, this is Zach Bond's guy. But now that guy is going over here and he's not a threat. And so Zach Bond immediately bails out and picks up this drag route coming across the field. Like, he's already knows, I don't have to worry about the running back anymore. It's such a heads up play. It's so good. And then if you watch your safeties here, Reed Blankenship is responsible for this tight end if he goes vertical, and he's not going vertical. So Blankenship jumps underneath this crossing route and they essentially bracket it. Like, there's nowhere to go with this football. They try to throw it and it almost gets picked off. I thought it was such a good rep all the way around. And again, here, this is just an example of this tricks coverage. Watch your weak side safety. We're calling him weak because there's 2 receiving threats on this side, 3 at the top. Watch how at the snap, he's just pretty much immediately, watch where his eyes go and where his hips go. Like, Darius Slay is on an island, like we talked about, and he is immediately keying onto this crosser. Now, nobody crosses, so he starts to come back to this side of the field. But this is what the Eagles do out of quarters. It's what they did a lot. And I mean, I'll just play a couple more of these. I don't have to keep talking about them all, but then here it's Isaiah Rodgers on an island, because again, you're cross keying to a 4 strong side. Isaiah Rodgers is all on his own. You get Zach Bond's interception came on one of these over the middle. This is a quarters coverage as well. And he's responsible for, I'm going to talk about this one. He's responsible for this number 3 guy if he breaks over the middle, and he does. And so he steps down, but then he reads Jordan Love's eyes and he sinks back into this dig window because he's just incredible, like incredible play. And the Eagles, Vic Fangio has not traditionally been known as a quarters guy. He's been a cover 3 matching guy his whole career. And he's played more quarters, but this season is the highest amount of quarters coverage Vic Fangio has ever played in his career. 19% of his snaps were quarters coverage this season. Jonny, do you know, if you were going to guess, what percentage of dropbacks did the Eagles play quarters coverage against the Packers?
I'm just quarters. You're not talking quarter, half quarter, just straight up cover 4.
Yeah. Well, okay, you can give me either one. Give me quarters plus quarter, half.
Have you got both?
Yes.
Oh, man, I hate guessing games. I would guess like 30% plus for quarters only.
It was 52% of their snaps were quarters.
I was going to say about 45, 50 if you included like cover 6 as well. But it was evident they were doing a hell of a lot of it.
Yeah, and if you include quarter, half, it jumps up to 67%.
And do you know why?
Because it takes
week
away
one,
everything that the Packers want to do.
Yes, deep over routes. The whole Fangio thing to stop the deep over routes that McVay was killing the league with. He will kill you if you go cover 3 match because it's very hard to stop. Those deep crossing routes, the Packers tried to do it and the Eagles took them away. Very, very nice.
And the nice thing about playing the Rams is it is the same style of offense. And so you're going to see a lot of the same things still come hang out in Patreon and check out our preview. You're going to see a lot of the same offensive concepts from the Rams. You're going to see a lot of the same concepts from the Eagles defensively to try to take it away. Hopefully it works as well next week as it did last week.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That would be nice. But we're not going to talk too much about the Rams now because that would... we'll get into that tomorrow because I have quite a lot of takes. So, if you're not on the Patreon, as I said, free trial. We rarely do shows only for Patreon. We do like mailbags and All-22 reviews, but rarely podcasts. But we probably will end up doing a little bit more, seeing as the community is growing. And again, if you're paying for it, you do expect us to do different things. So if you haven't signed up, please consider it if you're listening because, the Rams preview will be good tomorrow. We will get into the Rams game then. But for now, I spoke on Sunday, by the way, last week, I said that this Sunday was very stressful because my football team, Arsenal, were playing in a cup game and then the Eagles are playing in a knockout game. Well, one team lost, sadly. Luckily, the Eagles won, or that Sunday was bad. And I'm referencing that because it's 7:50 UK time and my wonderful team are about to play their rival, Shane. Like Eagles, it will be like Eagles Cowboys equivalent. And kickoff is in 10 minutes. So I am essentially ending the podcast now and saying I need to go. And GGN10 commenting Arteta out. No, absolutely not.
I have 2 more points I want to talk about on
that. We're going to talk about how Chauncey Gardner-Johnson plays as a trick safety, specifically on 3rd and 15 plus. We're not doing that. There we go. So stressful sports times for me at the moment. Very stressful. So this weekend did not go well for one of my teams. Thank God the Eagles won because that would have been a horrendous Sunday. But I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good about the Eagles this week, as I said, but I won't spoil anything until tomorrow.
Yeah, so hang out in our Patreon tomorrow and you'll get Johnny's exact score prediction. It'll be great. So thank you guys for joining us for this episode of On the Shane Page. We hope you enjoy the show. Please pass it around to your friends because, again, there's still people that listen to the BGN feed that have not found this one. So help us get the word out there and consider checking out our Patreon community at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. You can join as a free member. You can also get a free trial of our paid tiers. Come hang out with us there. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Birds.